Hi, how are you? I'm Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department, and welcome back to another segment of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And today, I'm here with my executive officer, Captain Mark Livy, and one of my able-bodied dispatchers, Michelle Fullerton from Wolfeboro Central Dispatch. And we're going to be introducing her here in a minute. But I just want to talk about a few things as we get into the month of March. Be mindful still that we've got, probably another 30 days of snow and cold weather and dangerous weather. So even though spring is on the 21st of March, my birthday, it's always on my birthday. It's not on the 22nd, it's on the 21st. We still probably have another 30 days or so of bad weather. So just be mindful of that and be careful. I just want to say a few things about Wolfeboro Central Dispatch. These are really the unsung heroes of the Wolfeboro Police Department. They are oftentimes the first people that you interact with when you call the Wolfeboro Police Department. They are in our emergency dispatch center and also assist us with our emergency operations center when that's in operation. They are very adept at handling all sorts of crisis phone calls and issues and situations, and needless to say, you can well imagine it is very stressful in that environment. I will be the first one to admit I could not do this job if I didn't have them, and I will also admit that I can't do their job. I certainly don't have their patience, and it is a real skill. It's a tough job. It's one that's very, very difficult to do. And these men and women of Wolfeboro Central Dispatch, they make it look so easy, and it's not. It is not an easy job, and very few people can do it well. And so with that, I'm going to turn you over to one of my very best dispatchers, Michelle. Michelle?
My name is Michelle Fullerton. I live in Wolfeboro with my husband and now grown son. I come from a background as a firefighter. I was on Wolfeboro Fire Rescue for almost 20 full years as a call member, eventually becoming a lieutenant. So I was on the other end of the radio long before I was in dispatch, but I think that that's part of what I love so much about my job, that I have the ability to still help people and feel really involved in this, even though it's not my community. But most of the time when I'm speaking with folks, they just need someone to talk to. They need to know what to do. They don't know how to answer a question. So I enjoy that part of my job, that folks truly do in this town treat us as central dispatch. We are who you call if your dog gets loose, or who you call if you lose power in the middle of the night. And I think that's important. And although I'm here under the auspices of the police department, I want folks to know that we are central dispatch. And that part of my job is what I really enjoy, just that ability to still help people, although not in the emergency capacity quite so much. But this has become not my community, but I do feel quite an affinity for the residents of Wolfeboro and help as much as I can. And that's something that I think is hugely important, and something that I see very frequently every day, that folks aren't feeling part of a community, and that the whole see something, say something is hugely important. But I think more important is, if maybe your next door neighbor you've not seen in a couple days, knock on the door and ask, are you okay? And don't wait for a police officer to check on them 5 days later. And being part of a community is hugely important.
Well said. And I think Michelle makes a really good point there, and it's one that I echo. Community involvement is very, very important, right? That's what really makes a community is that person-to-person, neighbor-to-neighbor interaction, caring for our friends, caring for our neighbors, caring for our fellow human beings. And I think that was really well said and very poignant. I will say that we have an incredibly talented staff in Wolfeboro Central Dispatch, and it is, believe it or not, it's a very eclectic group of men and women who have skills in all sorts of different areas. You've heard Michelle talk where she rose to the rank of lieutenant in the fire service, which is no small feat at all. I had an uncle that served for almost 40 years in the Cambridge, Massachusetts Fire Department, never getting above the rank of firefighter. So that's quite impressive in and of itself. And the study of fire science and understanding the science behind how fires begin and how to suppress them and how to deal with them and so forth is a real skill. But we have men and women in our central dispatch that have college degrees, that have degrees and certifications in culinary arts and information technology and history and political science and aviation science, and the list goes on and on and on. It's very eclectic, but it points out the fact that we have an incredibly well-educated central dispatch, and that's what I want people to really understand, that these are men and women from Wolfeboro and the greater Wolfeboro area who are well-trained, well-educated, and well-experienced, and they're very adept at handling your emergency calls. And we put them through quite a sophisticated and in-depth field training program before they get behind that microphone and before they get behind that telephone, and they're trained and they know how to respond. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to the captain for a brief status now on the Wolfeboro Police Department. Captain.
So to give a little bit more for the dispatch, so we have 5. You may know this or you may not. We have 5 full-timers and 5 part-time positions available. They're not all filled. Last month we just finished our oral boards to hire 2 new part-time dispatchers. So that process is going, and hopefully next month I can we'll give out the names and who was hired on those positions. But as you know, the part-time position is very important. It helps the full-timers take their vacations, let them go to training. They fill in. They're just as qualified as the full-times that we have in the central dispatch. But to go on more with the PD side, we are getting into those grants again, and I just want to elaborate more on the cell phone use. I mean, we see it when we drive our personal vehicles and when we're not in a cruiser. I mean, everybody is using their cell phones. I can't tell you enough to wait till you stop. Use the Bluetooth that's in your phone. Buy a Bluetooth piece that attaches to your console or into the air vents. Just something to hold the phone. You can't hold it while you drive. That isn't hands-free. You still have your hands on that phone. So I see it all the time out there, and the grants are coming out there. We're going to be out there, and the citations will come if you are driving with your cell phone. So I just want everyone to be aware of that, to stop using your cell phones, be aware of it. You can see it out there when you drive out there. Watch the other operators. You can see them out there. I mean, you can see them looking down when they drive. We know what you're doing. You're texting. You're looking at a text. Just wait till you get to your place of where you're heading, to the schools. Yeah, final destination. I mean, just get there. It can wait. There's nothing that important that you need to respond to that it can't wait to get to until you get to.
More important than your life.
Correct. He says it perfectly. So in March now, we have voting. The town voting's coming on March 13th from 8 to 7 p.m. Most people are aware of that. If you want, that's the time frame, that's the date. Get out there, get voting. Have your check your box, get it out there. Anything else that's going on with the PD that I can think of right now is everything else is going well, smoothly. It's been almost a year and 2 months for us, so it's going well. Pretty happy how things are moving forward.
And with that, I just want to reiterate what the captain said. Springtime is going to be upon us before we know it. And pretty soon, the Bluebird of Happiness is going to be out there. It's going to be the middle of July, and voluntary compliance with law is very important. Remember, my officers will be out there on grants. They'll be doing speed enforcement and pedestrian crosswalk safety enforcement, DWI interdiction. Operation Granite Hammer will be in full swing. We'll be doing drug interdiction stops. Various communities around the Lakes region will be engaged in DWI checkpoints. So these are all the things that you need to be aware of and you need to be paying attention to. And these are all very important. So again, voluntary compliance with the law. And with that, if you would like to be on Coffee and Connections with the Chiefs, come on down and just let Tim or I know that you're coming down, maybe what you want to talk about. We can talk about anything you want. We can talk about the Patriots. We can talk about baseball. We can talk about the Constitution. We can talk about anything that's on your mind. Come on down and be my guest on Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And of course, coffee's on me. So until next month, I'll see you. Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Chief Dean Rondeau. Welcome back to Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And here I'm with my friend Bob Batson. Today we're going to discuss a little bit about the drug problem and about the opioid crisis and what we can do, what the community can do to help get at this problem. So having said that, Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
One of the first questions is does Wolfeboro have a drug problem? Or are we so unique in New Hampshire that we don't? You know?
No, we have a drug problem. That's actually that's a pretty funny question. No, we have a drug problem. We've had a drug problem. I've been here since in this town as a police officer since June of 1996, and it was readily apparent then. And as sad as it may sound, some of the young men and women I was dealing with when they were in their teens or even preteens that showed an affinity for marijuana and other so-called harmless drugs or less harmful drugs have turned out to follow that pattern that we're all too familiar with and to become addicted to harder substances, whether ecstasy or crystal methamphetamine or heroin or opiates or other dangerous drugs. So yes, we do have a problem. It's been with us all along. I think because of the bucolic area of Wolfeboro, and it's very what's the word I'm looking for? It's hard to see the problem, but it's right below the surface. And I think oftentimes we're beguiled into this false sense of security because we're in such a beautiful area.
Yeah. Have you seen a substantial increase in the last 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. I noticed when I was a patrol sergeant back in 2005, I began to notice a serious increase in drug use, and not just drug use generally, but the use of harder, more sophisticated drugs like heroin, like ecstasy, like LSD, and it became apparent to me that we had a real problem, and it wasn't abating, and it was not an anomaly. And as much as I tried to sound that warning klaxon, I was often mocked as somebody who was trying to gild the lily. I love that term, right? Gild the lily. And I wasn't gilding the lily. I was just saying, look, we got a problem, and I'm trying to bring some public attention to it. And unfortunately, even at that point in time, even in 2005, it was just too late. Because once you begin to see the problem, I hate to equate it to cancer, but once you see cancer, once it becomes readily apparent that it's cancer, it's usually too late.
Next question is, what do you see that family and the community can do to address the problem?
Well, so that's a great question. So going back to my days in the military, when we looked at solving problems in the military, the first thing you have to do is you have to recognize what the problem is, right? You have to define the problem. You have to look at the problem before you can begin to assess solutions. So I think the first piece to this is recognizing, yeah, we have a problem. This is the problem, and the problem is drugs, and maybe a subset of that problem is opioid addiction. And then I think we can do the things that the community, I think, right now is really geared toward doing, right? Which is, from my perspective, law enforcement and prosecution, right? Because that's one piece of the fight, if you will. The second piece of the fight is obviously treatment and recovery, right? So we got to do that, and then prevention and education, or education and prevention, right? And that's what I think the community can do. And the one thing I just want to get at is that, and I've heard the term, the war on drugs, and of course I kind of love that, the war on drugs, it's we're waging war, right? But look, let's go back to our history class, right? World War I, World War II, it was a total fight. The country was engaged totally in the fight, and that's what has not happened in the last 40 years. The war on drugs has been punted to law enforcement. Okay, you guys got it. You figure it out. Well, no, this is a whole of society problem. It requires a whole of society approach, and that's what that's what we can do to fight this thing. And if we do, if we band together, we'll win.
That's the words I wanted to hear, because that's what we're trying to do with Team Wolfeboro, is really start a prevention program over a long period of time. We want a daily message that the youth see, that the parents see, that talks about drug prevention. We want to be able to, we're having, as part of Team Wolfeboro, we're having decals made up that say, partner for a drug-free community. I just think that's so important to have that message. We've done 2 forums last year in 2017. We're looking at doing another forum in 2018. Here's a brochure we did on Team Wolfeboro. We've done brochures on the various drugs, and here's one on marijuana and the dangers of marijuana. We've bought silicone bracelets and passed those out in numerous schools, the high school, the middle school, Tuftonboro Central School, OSPI, Cornerstone Christian. We're just trying to help work with the youth. And one of our latest efforts is also to do a T-shirt that has, partner for a drug-free community, Team Wolfeboro.
Very nice.
As well as the back.
Very nice.
And try and get some in school colors to get those in the school. And again, just have that prevention message. I think you're absolutely right. And we have to get the community involved. We have to get businesses and residents and the school system and everybody, businesses.
Got to be on board, right? And if we do that, we'll, this is going to be a generational approach, right? So just let me, real quick, one last thing. This is going to be a generational approach, all right? You're not going to solve this in a year or two, okay? And this is going to be a long-term approach. This is going to be 30 or 40 years, but we got to start now.
Absolutely. And I think it's critical that we don't delay any longer.
I'm on board.
Okay, super. My last question is, what's going to be the impact of legalizing marijuana? It's coming.
That's the million-dollar question, right? It's going to be hard to control. I'll tell you right now, it's going to be really, really hard to control, especially with some of the bills that I've seen proposed. It's a gateway drug. It's going to lead to other addictions. I don't think it should be legalized. That's my opinion. I've expressed that to our lawmakers and our policymakers. I think it is an addictive drug, and I don't think we need it, and we certainly don't need it when we're trying to fight this opioid epidemic. It's just bad. It's bad all around. The impacts, I think, are going to be bad.
I think that's an important message, that it's a gateway drug. It breaks down the barriers that people initially have. And I think it's affecting our youth. So, Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's hard. It really is hard to control, and you hit the nail right on the head. Anytime you break down those barriers, and you start getting into permissive or semi-permissive attitudes and use about drugs, it just sends the wrong message, especially to our youth. And it's one thing, supposedly, if you start smoking at 25 or 30. It's another thing if you start smoking marijuana at 13. It's not good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So, welcome back to Coffee and Connections with the Chief. I'm Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department. I'm here with a newfound friend, Lenny Brochu from Concord. And right now I'm going to turn over the mic to Lenny.
Hi, I'm Lenny. My question for you today is, what's your viewpoint on marijuana legalization?
So that's a great question, and we get asked that a lot by a lot of different citizen groups, and this is a great question. And Lenny, I want to thank you for being on the show, and thank you for asking that question. So for me, the science is clear on marijuana and its legalization, and I don't believe. I honestly believe that marijuana is an addictive drug. I don't believe it should be legalized. I don't know enough on the effects of marijuana related to its medical uses. It may have medical uses, and you know the science on that is conflicting, and the Wolfeboro PD hasn't sent me to medical school yet, and I don't think they're going to. And I'm certainly not qualified to speak on its medical uses, so I'll just suffice it to say it may have medical uses. That's better determined by physicians that have actual degrees in medicine, and I would trust in whatever a physician told me, and I hope that the rest of the public would too, because I mean that's why they go to essentially 8 or 10 years of college for. But relative to just the out-and-out legalization of marijuana, I think it's a bad idea. I think it's dangerous. I think it's addictive. I think it can break down barriers that society has erected to help keep us in safe and help keep us in our lanes. It's an addictive drug. I think that no matter what we do, there's always going to be a black market for it, right? And I think that, you know, when I go back to my youthful days, right? I was your age once. Yeah. When I go back to my youthful days, I grew up in the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, right? So Bright Lights, big city. So I'm no stranger to marijuana, all right? And I hope everybody realizes that, okay? And of course, I spent 5 years in Latin America during the counter-drug fight, and you know, so again, you know, no stranger to the effects of marijuana on people or to the effects of cocaine on people, and was heavily involved in the fight in Latin America to keep drugs out of the United States. So, but in terms of the black market, a black market, I think, in the United States, even if marijuana is legal, is always going to be there for the age groups of about 12 through about 20. All right, because no matter what we do in this country, we're not legalizing it for that age group. So there is always going to be that black market, all right? So that's the first black market you're always going to have. And the second black market that you're always going to have is the one on taxation, right? And this is my personal favorite. So if you pick up a package of cigarettes, right, a pack of smokes, right, go for a pack of mobs, and you pick up the mobs, and you look on the bottom of the pack of mobs, right, you're going to see a tax stamp, okay? All right. There are always going to be those individuals that are going to try to avoid the tax on that. So whether they're growing it at home, or they're going to grow it in a distant location and bring it in, you know, where it's not taxed, so they can get around the taxation. And that's the other piece that's going to drive the black market. All right, so. And it's a simple formula here, right? Economically, do you guys take economics at Brewster? All right, so we talk about the law of supply and demand, and anytime you're dealing with a product that's addictive, right? So let's take alcohol, right? There's a tax on alcohol, right? You know that, and you have big companies, huge corporations, Anheuser-Busch, Jim Beam, and a whole bunch of different companies, breweries and distilleries that are into alcohol production. And when you do that, you're paying a lot of money to the federal government. You're paying a lot of money to the state government in the form of taxations and permits and fees so they can conduct their business legally, right? And the one thing that they don't want is good old Dean Rondeau sitting out in the back 40 making sour mash, cutting into their profits. And they're going to demand that you, Lenny, you, the chief of police, get out into that back 40 and hang up that guy, Dean Rondeau, by his Buster Browns because he's undercutting their profits and he's not doing it right. He's not playing it right. Well, the same thing is going to happen with marijuana. If you're going to tax marijuana, right, which is what California is finding out right now, what Washington State is finding out right now, what Oregon is finding out right now, what Colorado is finding out right now, is that where there's an addictive product, people are going to want that, right? So law, supply, and demand. You know, oh yeah, give me that. Make me feel good, right? Make me feel good. I want to escape my problems. Make me feel good. I don't want to deal with my problems. Let me have another crutch. I need another crutch to deal with my problems. Well, okay. And if you can buy that marijuana for $50 less or $25 less from a distributor because he or she is not paying the tax on it, then you've defeated the whole taxation issue, right? And that's going to fuel a black market. Whether we like it or not, those are facts. It's just going to happen. And it's what's happening now in California. It's what's happening now in Oregon, in Washington State, and Colorado. And so once we let this genie out of the bottle, right, we're going to have a tough time controlling it and a tough time pushing it back in. So for all of those reasons, I'm very resistant to legalize marijuana. I don't think we need it. I don't think it's good. Certainly right now in the midst of an opioid crisis that I'm in. My men are involved with every day. I should say my men and women because I have female police officers as well. So my officers are involved with every day. This is the last thing I want to deal with, to be quite honest with you. And lastly, from the medical aspect of it, anything that you smoke and you ingest into your body that avoids the body's natural abilities to filter out toxins is bad. It causes cancer and other maladies. And from the health standpoint, I'm opposed to it as well. I don't smoke. I never have. I did 34 years in the U.S. Army. I never smoked. I did try dipping a little, but I gave that up, and, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, so I do like my coffee, and so did I answer your question?
That was great.
Okay, there's your mic.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for your service.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Is there any other questions? Does your friend have a question he would like to ask?
No, they're all camera shy.
Well, we'll just let the camera know we're joined by several members supporting Lenny in his question here from Brewster Academy. Look like hardworking young men, and I'm really proud that we have these young men that are so interested in their community and want to get out and ask questions. And I think this is excellent. And I will say too that I know a little bit about Brewster Academy. My best friend graduated from Brewster Academy, many years ago, long before you gentlemen ever stepped foot on the campus, and he would talk fondly of Brewster Academy. So I know the school's reputation, and I know the school very well, and you guys are excellent examples of our great American youth, and I thank you very much for coming down and getting involved and asking your questions. And if you want me to come into class, or you have anything we can do for you to reciprocate, let me know. I'll be happy to talk about anything you guys want to talk about. How does radar work, or constitutional issues, or if you just want to talk about football. All right. How's the weather in Bermuda right now? I bet it is. All right, hey, guys, good luck. Good luck. All right, thank you. Come on over here, support your teacher. A little moral support. So thanks again for joining us on Coffee and Connections with the Chief. Welcome back. I'm I'm here with my friend Robert Oblinas. Yes, sir. And he's from Brewster Academy, and he wants to ask the chief a question. So, Rob, without further ado, there you go.
Thanks, Chief. It's great to be on the show. As a resident of Wolfeboro as well, I've seen a lot of new faces in your department. So I was just curious who they are and where did they come from. And I just love to know. I know Captain Livia, I know yourself, and so I like to know you guys. And so I'd love to know a little bit about them.
Sure, absolutely. So the first thing, and that's a great question, is that on the Coffee and Connections with the Chief, if you follow us, just like an addictive soap opera, you'll be introduced to these men and women one at a time. But suffice it to say, Rob asked a great question, and let me address that real quick. So we had a number of retirements in 2017, very early on. And then at the same time that was occurring, we also knew that we needed to hire some part-time police officers to kind of help us with the gaps and seams. So that's the reason you're seeing so many. So we did hire Mike Fenton from Wakefield. We did hire Eric LaRochelle from Wakefield. Both of those officers are really experienced men that have several years of law enforcement experience already in Wakefield. Eric LaRochelle is coming to us from the United States Marine Corps, where he's both an infantry officer and a embassy security policeman. So he was at a U.S. embassy overseas. So he has a lot of law enforcement experience coming in from the Marine Corps as well. So we're really lucky to have both of those young men. We hired 3 part-time officers last year. Christine Martineau, with a K, Christina with a K, Martineau, is a full-time certified officer. She's a detective in the town of Pittsfield, New Hampshire, and she's coming over to us as a part-time patrol officer. And so we're really happy to have her, and she brings with her some very, very good credentials and a lot of experience. We have Garrett Anthony, who is a former Wolfeboro traffic control officer, worked for me years ago, and is now a University of New Hampshire police officer. So he works down in Durham, and we brought him back as a part-time police officer. So he's a full-time certified part-time police officer. And we have Chris Dustin, also a very, very experienced police officer, and he's coming from Stratford, New Hampshire. And he's also a certified deputy sheriff. So he's coming to us, and he actually lives now here in Wolfeboro, and he's been working a lot of our shifts. So that accounts for some of the new faces. And I think that's it. You know, I took the chief's position about a year ago. The captain was promoted shortly thereafter me to take my position. He's been doing a phenomenal job, and he's really my right-hand guy, without a doubt. Shane Emerson was promoted to position of detective when that was vacated by Guy Maloney. He was promoted to the rank of sergeant to fill in Sergeant Keaton's position. He left us to take a chief's position up in Bartlett, New Hampshire. So our loss with Sergeant Keaton was certainly Bartlett's gain, but we're really happy to help out another town in Carroll County. We knew it was the right move for Chris. And of course, he brought to them a boatload of experience, but he was replaced by Sergeant Guy Maloney, who has a master's in criminal justice from Norwich University. So again, you know, we're replacing one good guy with another good guy, and so we consider ourselves to be very fortunate. You know, one of the good problems to have as a chief of police is a never-ending supply of already certified officers that want to come to your agency, and that's really heartwarming for me when that happens, because it tells me I'm doing something right, and I'm just trying to do the right thing, you know, and I'm trying to solve problems. I'm trying to keep my staff happy, because when I have a happy staff, I have a productive staff, which is what I want, and I think what the citizens want. They don't want a lazy dullard on the force. They want somebody who is busy and who's engaged and who's proactive and who's willing to work with the community in solving problems. And that's really, lastly, where we get at. You know, I'm very community policing oriented, and that's what I want. I want community solutions to problems, and not just. I don't want it to ever seem like I'm the dictator and I'm dictating the solution. I want buy-in from all our stakeholders, and that's very important to me.
Thanks, Chief. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your department. You guys do a phenomenal job, and love knowing all the guys on and girls on the force. So thanks. Really appreciate it.
We're and just so you know, we're always. I love to come in and talk to the students in the classes about anything, whether it's about how radar works or our technical crash reconstruction and how we use applied math and physics in putting crashes back together again, or talking about constitutional issues or legal issues or Supreme Court decisions or anything that your students want to talk about. So if we love engaging with the youth. We love doing it in a classroom environment, a classroom setting, and we would love to have your students, any students, in fact, come and speak to us on Coffee and Connections. And they can ask really basically whatever they want to ask, and we'll be happy to have a dialogue about that. So, but I think it's phenomenal. Your class came down, was so engaged and so willing to ask questions. I think that's really, really important. And I've always said, I want children to know how to think, not what to think. And I think that's really important. So asking questions, getting engaged, and weighing the responses to make decisions based off of data, empirical data, I think is critical. And critical thinking is very important. So again, I appreciate you and your students coming down.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us with Coffee and Connections with the Chief. I'm Chief Dean Rondeau, and please come on down, be part of the show. Coffee's on me, and I want you to have a great and safe day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Hi, how are you? I'm Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department, and I'm back with your safety tip for the month of March. And as I said earlier in my show, we still got about another 30 days of winter weather before the real warming winds and temperatures of April and May are upon us. So I want you to be mindful, keep an eye to the weather, be very, very careful, okay? It still can be, winter storms can still pop up in the month of March and dump inches or a foot of snow, and the rain can turn to ice very quickly. So just be mindful of the weather and where you're going. And if it is going to be inclement weather and you do have to get to that important meeting, or you do have to take a trip to see loved ones, just be very careful and make sure you leave ample time in your travel schedule so you're not rushing. The second safety tip of the month, and this one's very important, as we get into the springtime and as we get into the summer, there will be many public works projects ongoing on Center Street, down Dockside, and some other locations, repairing some of the damage from the winter, or addressing areas of the infrastructure that need to be repaired. Give these guys a little bit of room. Don't crowd them. Let them do their work. They're under tight schedules. They're trying to get all this done before the busy summer months are upon us. So just give them a little bit of time, give them a little bit of space, and don't crowd them, and certainly stay away from their work areas. The last thing we want to do is be responding to a work area accident if it can be avoided. So again, I'm Chief Dean Rondeau, the Wolfeboro Police Department, with your 2 safety tips for the month of March. Thank you very much, and thank you for tuning in.